He reportedly kicked and punched so many holes in his office walls, he reportedly fired an assistant who was on the way to his childhood friend's funeral. He jeopardized an entire production, cracked cell phones in half, pushed an assistant out of a moving car. I hope I don't get sued. Oh my god, hey! Welcome back to my kingdom of stagey isolation. If you are meeting me and seeing my face for the first time, my name is Mickey Joe and I am obsessed with all things theatre. This is the first new video I am filming in a while. I've been releasing a lot of content that I'd filmed very quickly and I've been having a little bit of a break, but something has happened in the theatre Broadway community that has become so explosive I absolutely had to come on here and talk about it. If you've been paying any kind of attention to Broadway news in the past couple of weeks, you will have heard some version of this story. I'm going to be talking about why Karen Olivo left Moulin Rouge. I'm talking about Sutton Foster and Hugh Jackman in The Music Man. I'm talking about Beetlejuice closing early. I'm talking about the West Side Story revival controversy. I'm talking about To Kill a Mockingbird being cancelled in the West End, and how all of this chaos orbits one individual, and that is the producer, Scott Rudin. A lot of elements of it are still technically under the remit of allegedly, and a lot of the people that I am talking about are, let's just say, wildly litigious. So I'm not trying to get sued with this one, but I want to talk about it. So you may not know who producer Scott Rudin is. You may have heard his name. He is an Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, Tony Award winner. He has a bunch of Tony Awards. He produces film as well as theatre. He's a very, very big name. In sort of the court of public opinion, he already has 3 strikes against him. I'm going to tell you what those are. First of all, he is one of the producers of the controversial Ivo Van Hove West Side Story Broadway revival that was opening around the time that COVID shut down theatres. This revival was already controversial for multiple reasons, to do with race, to do with how it was portraying West Side Story on stage, to do with how it was treating the source material. Most controversial was the casting of Amar Ramazar. This is a dancer with a history of sexual assault allegations against them for sharing nude images of a co-worker in, I think, the New York City Ballet. Scott Rudin and the producers, along with the creative team, stood by the casting of Ramazar, and the cast remained generally very quiet on the issue because they had no choice. The next fun Scott Rudin story is when he was producing the smash hit Broadway production of To Kill a Mockingbird under a new adaptation. Around the same time, the fantastic production Timothy Sheeder directed for Regent's Park Open Air Theatre was meant to be commencing on a national tour of the UK. A huge deal for Regent's Park as a venue, a beautiful production. This was cancelled because Scott Rudin basically forced all of the professional and amateur productions of To Kill a Mockingbird to close due to some sort of rights agreement and licensing situation. The technicalities of that are very complicated, but he made it so that this version on Broadway was the only version that could legally be performed, and all the other versions had to close. Generally speaking, this was not interpreted as a cool move. Thirdly, he is considered responsible for Beetlejuice closing early. There's nothing that directly ties him to this, but it is widely understood he wanted the Winter Garden Theatre for the upcoming revival of The Music Man, starring Hugh Jackman and Sutton Foster, in an epic peak of whiteness. I'm honestly not sure I could picture a revival that the Broadway community needs less right now than The Music Man starring Hugh Jackman and Sutton Foster. It's just so obviously commercial. It offers nothing relevant to today's very evolving society and all of the dialogue that we've had about Broadway and representation over the past year during this shutdown. It was already a very tone-deaf choice before this happened. Now it's crazy. But what's understood to have happened is that Scott Rudin used his considerable power to influence the theatre owner to force Beetlejuice out on a technicality of having financially underperformed earlier in its run. Beetlejuice had since begun performing a lot better, and ticket sales had hugely improved, which is why the closing announcement was so surprising. This is consistent with a lot of what you hear about Scott Rudin. He is someone who likes getting his own way and is comfortable using his considerable power and influence in order to do that. So metaphorically, he's walking around Broadway and just throwing his 17 Tony Awards at people. And I say metaphorically, but he might literally do that, because in the past month, what has emerged, The Hollywood Reporter ran this very explosive article with tell-alls from his previous staff about years of emotional and physical abuse to his underlings because of rage issues. He would lash out physically, emotionally, at his assistants, at the people who worked for him, at colleagues, at contemporaries. All sorts of crazy stuff is now being talked about that he has done. Let me read you some of the examples. He reportedly kicked and punched so many holes in his office walls that assistants had to cover them with plants. I like the idea of these Scott Rudin rage plants in his office and him just being such an angry man that you go in there for meetings and it's the Eden Project. It is this tropical environment. He's like Poison Ivy, but angrier. He reportedly pushed an assistant out of a moving car. He reportedly cracked cell phones in half like he was shucking oysters. What does he have, some super soldier serum going on? This man is literally a Batman villain. He reportedly threw his corded phone so often that assistants measured the length of the cord so they could be out of reach. That's adaptability. I like that, but should they have to? Answer, obviously not. I think that's an incredible metaphor for how so many struggling people in the entertainment industry are having to cope with these conditions of abuse and torment. They are collectively measuring the length of a phone cord and standing just far enough away that they don't get hit in the face. That is Broadway right now. He reportedly fired an assistant who was on the way to his childhood friend's funeral. He reportedly emailed a staffer 1,400 times over 9 days. He reportedly jeopardized an entire production to get back at playwright Bruce Norris. Here's another fun thing he did. He wildly reduced all of his ticket prices at the beginning of the pandemic on Broadway when it looked like shows might still be reopening, but it was very dubious about whether or not people would still feel safe to go, whether it would be safe to go in New York. He made everything cheaper, under the suggestion that this would give young people an opportunity to see more theatre and jeopardise their health. No thought for his cast, his creative teams, his crews at this time, but every thought for the financial implications of this situation for him. This tells you so much about the character of this man. A lot of parallels are being drawn to the exposing of Harvey Weinstein, that this is someone whose behaviour was well understood throughout the industry, and that there's this collective lack of surprise about these allegations coming forwards. And yet it hasn't been well documented, because even though he's behaving this way very publicly to a vast array of people, it would seem, he is protected by non-disclosure agreements and his considerable influence. So this article came out in the Hollywood Reporter, and unlike the Harvey Weinstein situation, it didn't immediately blow up the entire internet with responses. A lot of the film studios who work with Scott Rudin remain silent about it. A lot of the Broadway news pages you'd have expected to report on this story said nothing. Eventually Playbill ran the story, but their delay prompted several actors to come out and say things first, including Rent alumnus Anthony Rapp, including Heidi Schreck, who wrote the Broadway play What the Constitution Means to Me. Jeremy O. Harris, who wrote Slave Play, tweeted something about Scott Rudin famously being loudly racist and having his own previous altercation with him. And then we arrive at the biggest reaction to this, which came from Karen Olivo. Karen Olivo is a Tony Award-winning actor who has starred in the Heights and Hamilton, and prior to the Broadway shutdown was starring as Satine in the Broadway production of Moulin Rouge. Amidst the silence of Broadway, Karen Olivo announced they would not be returning to the production of Moulin Rouge as Satine in response to this as a form of protest. She went live on Instagram to show this, and you can go and look at the video, it's still there on her page, where she articulates this incredibly well, and there's been subsequently a follow-up interview that she gave where she has articulated her reasons behind this. But essentially what she has said is that it is impossible for her to try and change the system from the inside. When you go into a show like Moulin Rouge, when you are leading the company, it is impossible for her to do the kind of important work to try and change a system that is fundamentally built on abuse and is built on systemic racism and misogyny and all sorts of terrible issues that we are seeing little incidences of, and we are starting to see the ripples of in the larger Broadway pool, if you will. Stories about different directors and choreographers and all sorts of people being nightmarishly horrible to their casts, and years later, after their death, being hailed as these great artistic heroes. You don't have to read up much on Bob Fosse to find out that he was a very controversial figure, even though he is respected as one of the greatest creative names in theatre, and what he did for the world of choreography and dance. That is intact, but the way that he conducted his own rehearsals and extorted sexual favours from his cast members, it's not controversial. Controversial implies that it's defensible. It's wrong. It is plainly morally reprehensible. I've seen a lot of people suggesting that she should just return to the show instead and try and fix the problems from within. And I think for her, she would feel like she was being complicit in something by accepting a paycheck that's built on a system of abuse. By making this incredibly bold and brave move, Karen Olivo has essentially caused everyone's heads to turn to Sutton Foster and Hugh Jackman, who are meant to be starring in the Music Man revival produced by Scott Rudin. Because here's the thing, Moulin Rouge isn't even a Scott Rudin show. Karen Olivo is simply resigning out of sheer principle. She is not the one giving money to Scott Rudin by attracting loads of theatregoers to his show. In the days that followed this, Sutton Foster and Hugh Jackman said nothing until it was reported that Sutton Foster, behind the scenes in private negotiations, had refused to star in The Music Man unless Scott Rudin's involvement ended. This came with the subsequent announcement that Scott Rudin would be stepping back from all of his Broadway productions. If that sounds vague to you, it's because it deliberately is. We have no idea what that means contractually, financially, legally. What role does he have in this? He is stepping back. He is not stepping down. He is not leaving. Or is he? Is that what that means? It's been very uncertain and very carefully worded. It's one of those situations where he has expressed a certain amount of regret without really formally apologising to those concerned. In a press release, Sutton Foster explained that she had wanted to handle this privately and not address it publicly, which came with its own sort of small backlash, because when you have that kind of a platform and that kind of a reach, there's the sense that you do have an obligation to address these kind of issues and these areas that aren't morally grey, that are just unacceptable when we're talking about abuse, when we're talking about bringing physical harm to people. And Hugh Jackman amongst this has said nothing, although Radar Online has reported this story that would make it seem as though Hugh Jackman is the entire reason Scott Rudin stood down. Like Hugh came as the hero and forced him out by doing nothing. My concern is that he's still going to star in this production and Scott Rudin will still be able to benefit from this financially in some way. And at that point, you are enabling power and behaviour, and it's just questionable. It's so questionable. If any of my viewers in the UK are wondering how this might affect things in the West End and whether this is just a Broadway problem, Scott Rudin was involved with producing The Book of Mormon here in the West End and the transfer of To Kill a Mockingbird. Sonia Friedman has announced that he will be, again, stepping back from both of those productions. I'm still not sure what that means. And then something else very interesting happened, because Rob Roth, who was due to be directing the upcoming UK tour of Beauty and the Beast for Disney, emailed Scott Rudin on a plane, but was overlooked by someone else who clearly understood enough about the situation to share his email online. You deserve an honorary Tony Award for somehow getting that horrible woman, Karen Olivo, to quit acting. It's a miracle. God bless you, Scott, for your service to the American theatre. So the contents of the email were subsequently shared online, and if there's one thing Disney Theatrical do not want to be involved with, it's any of this nonsense. And so it was mutually agreed that he leave the production. He was fired. Now, ordinarily, I would say that while he hasn't committed as many criminal offences as Harvey Weinstein had, this is still someone who should not be afforded the level of power and influence that has enabled them to act this way, and that needs to be taken away from them. And for that reason, yes, people should be speaking up, people should be telling their stories, people should be spreading awareness. However, in terms of the cancel culture train of all of this, I am reminded of something else that recently made the news. Liam Scarlett, who was a celebrated ballet choreographer for the Royal Opera House, recently died by suicide. A contemporary of his attributes this to sexual assault claims that were made years before, were subsequently dismissed, and despite this he was still dropped from the Royal Opera House, and because of the publicity around it, he was not able to work again as a choreographer. I don't believe the best response to this is to cancel someone so hard they are driven to suicide. And while this is something that should absolutely occur to us automatically, just with the way we interact with other human beings and treat them, I think this being in the news at the same time is something that should make us pay attention to how we handle this situation. This is by no means a defence of any of the reprehensible allegations against Scott Rudin. However, and if you retain one sentence from this video, let it be this one. There has to be a better way of demanding accountability from people for negative actions that doesn't involve pushing them towards suicide. The level of power and the level of influence and the level of ability to reoffend can be removed without ostracizing someone so completely from their entire life and livelihood that they see no other choice but to commit suicide. It's not the solution to this. It can't be the solution to this. I wish I had a magic answer to what the way forwards is here, and I think we should be looking to people like Karen Olivo, and we should be looking to all of the amazing voices for change in the Broadway community and uplifting those and hoping that other people with the same levels of privilege and power, like all of Karen Olivo's white male co-stars in her own show and the other people working in Scott Rudin shows, feel they are able to come forwards and be that same responsible voice for change and authenticity and accountability. This is an incredibly complex and nuanced issue and a very heavy and serious issue. Please, please, please let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments section. I would love to talk about this. I would love to get more educated on this if there are other perspectives I'm not considering. I'm hoping we can all be receptive to each other's opinions and try and treat each other like human beings. I hope that helps some of you who had maybe heard some about these stories going on in the news but didn't fully understand the implications or where this had come from, and that you now understand more of this and will be inspired to find out more, I guess, and keep uplifting voices for change in the Broadway and theatre communities. Oh, that was a lot. If you're new to my channel, I promise not every video is this serious, and if you want fun, stagey theatre content as well as the occasional bout of news and drama, hit the subscribe button so you can get regular content from myself. If you would like to support me as a content creator, you can also head over to patreon.com/MickeyJoeTheatre, where for various membership tiers, you can help support me as a content creator and get access to all sorts of perks, including discounts on some upcoming merchandise, including exclusive videos, extended videos, early previews of videos, all sorts of good stuff. I hope that everyone is staying safe and that you have a stagey day. For 10 more seconds, I'm Mickey Joe Theatre. Oh my god, hey. Thanks for watching, have a stagey day. Subscribe!